welcome to another video. Today I am going to be doing a little tutorial of something that I've been meaning to film for a really long time, and it is a Possum Palace for the Australian Rescue Craft Guild, and they are for rescuing little possums, as you may have guessed by the name of it. I will start by saying it is not my pattern. I will put all of the pattern details below, but it is by a lovely person named Maria, who has very kindly said that I can make this video tutorial. And the reason I'm doing it is that I have a friend of mine who said that they would love to make one of these Possum Palaces to help the rescue out, but was like adamant that they weren't able to do it. And I know they can, so I thought maybe a video tutorial would help people, I guess, get the confidence they need to be able to make one of these. It's really not that difficult a pattern. If you just know a couple of stitches, then you'll be able to make one. You don't have to be in Australia to make them if you're willing to post to Australia. So if you want to help cute little possums out getting rescued, then keep watching, and happy Possum Palace making. The original pattern has been written in UK terms, but I will be doing it in US terms, as they're the terms that I'm more used to working in, and also it's another alternative for people who are used to US terms can use this video if they like. The link to the written pattern will be below, as well as to the rescue in case you wanted to donate or support some other way. They also have a whole bunch of other patterns that you can make. Possum Palaces are quite often in demand, but you can check their website to see what they need the most at the moment. But otherwise, as long as you know a single crochet, back loop only, chain stitch, and crocheting 2 stitches together, you can pretty much make this. So let's dive into it. So the materials you're going to want are 3 acrylic yarns. In this case, I'm just using the Spot Saver USA style from 4 Seasons, which is a Spotlight brand here in Australia. But really any kind of 10 ply acrylic yarn will work. We're gonna be triple stranding it, so you can have 3 different colors, 3 of the same color, it really doesn't matter. It's also a pretty great project to use scrap yarn on, so if you've got anything lying around in your stash, you are more than welcome to use that on this pattern as well. You might just need to adjust or add some extra rows, but we will talk about that when we get there. You'll also need, if you want, a row counter, not necessary, but potentially helpful, a pair of scissors, a yarn needle for finishing off, a stitch marker can be helpful if you are someone who likes working with those, and I will be using a 6.5mm hook. You can use any hook size that you like, you just need to make sure it's quite tight stitches because you don't want the little possum feet getting caught in between the stitches. So with all of that ready to go, let's jump into the tutorial. So to start, we're going to make a magic circle with our yarn. This is how I do it. I know everyone has different ways of doing a magic circle, but whatever works for you is absolutely fine, and just make sure you grab all of the strands of yarn. If you haven't worked with multiple strands of yarn, this is the perfect time to practice it. It can take a little bit of getting used to, but I believe in you all. So we've made our magic circle here, and then we're going to make 6 single crochets into the magic circle. I will sometimes tighten the magic ring as I'm going, especially when I'm using multiple strands of yarn. It can get a bit hard to pull once you've done all 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, one more. Once you've done all 6, you can pull the tail of it tight to close up the middle of that magic ring. We're going to work in rounds here, so we're not going to slip stitch and chain one, we're just going to keep working into the next stitch, which can be where your stitch marker comes in very handy to mark the start of the row. So the next thing we're going to do is increase in every stitch around. So we're going to do 2 single crochets in the next stitch, 2 single crochets in the stitch after, etc. until we reach the end again. So that's the first one. I'm going to put a stitch marker in, second one into that same stitch. Now 2 into the next one. It might feel very tight, but that is pretty normal because you're working with 3 strands of yarn. Is round 2 done. Moving on to round 3, we're going to follow this pattern for quite a while. So the next one's going to be a single crochet into the next stitch and then an increase into the stitch after. And we're going to follow that pattern around. So a single crochet and then an increase, a single crochet and then an increase all the way around. Single crochet, put the stitch marker back in, and now 2 into the next one. That is the end of row 3. Now you may have guessed what we're doing next, but the next step is we're going to do another row of increases. So we're going to do a single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches, and then we're going to increase in the 3rd stitch and repeat that pattern all the way around. Two of my single crochets, so the next one is an increase. The 2, here's my increase. I'm going to follow that all the way around and I'll meet you back at the end of this round. So we've just finished round 4, and you should have quite a tight weave on your crochet. So if you think about little possum's claws, you don't really want them getting caught on anything too loose. Obviously it is still crochet, there'll still be little gaps, especially on your increases, but if you look at it from kind of a bit of a distance and you can't see any obvious gaps, that's a great start. So our next row, row 5, we're going to follow the same pattern, but this time we're just adding an extra single crochet. So we're going to go 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches, and then we're going to double crochet into the 4th stitch, and then repeat that pattern all the way around of 3 single crochets and then an increase. Our first one. 2, 3, and then an increase into the next. Again, 1, 3 single crochets. We're going to increase into the next, so 2 single crochets in the same space. Keep doing that all the way around, and I will see you when we reach our stitch marker again. Alright, that is row 5 done. We're going to move on to row 6, and you may have guessed by now what this is going to be, but we're going to do a single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches, and then we're going to do an increase in the 5th stitch. We're going to follow that pattern all the way around. So once again, I'll show you my first repeat of the pattern, and then we'll meet back. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then in the 5th stitch we're going to do a double crochet. One more time. I'm going to go single crochet in the next one, 2, 3, 4, and then 2 single crochets in the next one, which is our increase. Follow that pattern all the way around, and I will meet you back at the stitch marker. That is row 6 done. Now we're moving on to row 7, and once again we are going to be doing a single crochet into the next 5 stitches this time, and then an increase in the 6th stitch. So you can tell by now that this is following a pattern. Every row we finish, the next row we just add 1 more single crochet before we do our increase, and in that way you should be getting quite a flat base. If you find it's curling up at the sides, you may need to size up your hook, and if you feel like the gaps are too big, you may need to size down your hook a little. We're going to keep on doing this pattern for a little while until our base reaches about 24 centimeters in diameter. So let's go. 2, 3, 4, and 5, and now time for our increase here. And our increase. Continue that pattern around, and I will see you at the stitch marker. Alright, that is row 7 down. On to round 8, and again, no prizes for guessing what we're going to be doing. We are going to be single crocheting into each of the next 6 stitches, and then doing a single crochet increase into the 7th stitch. So let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then an increase into our next one. Okay, I didn't put my stitch marker back in. We are all human, but I can just count back and pop it in now, and then I will see you back at the end of the row. So keep following that, 6 single crochets and then an increase. I'll see you back. Okay, that's that round done. In our next round, we're going to be doing 7 single crochets and then an increase. So again, we're just still following this same pattern. We're going to follow it all the way until we're doing 10 single crochets and an increase, but we'll just take it one step at a time. If you find your hands are starting to hurt, it can be a bit hard on the hands. using a triple stranded yarn and working quite tight tension to keep it without gaps. So don't be afraid to pause, grab a cup of tea, stretch your wrists, stretch your hands. Do this in a few sessions rather than smashing it all out in one session. That is totally fine. So just a reminder, at this point, feel free to take a break. Otherwise, let's jump into the next round. So the next round, we are doing 7 single crochets and then an increase. And I will try to remember to put my stitch marker in this time. So that's 1. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and an increase. And you can hear that my hook is getting a little squeaky on this acrylic yarn, but it is important to use a yarn that is very easily machine washable for the rescue volunteers so that they can reuse these as many times as possible for their possum rescues. Anyway, continue that pattern of 7 single crochets and an increase, and I'll see you back for the next round. Alright, that is round 9 done, and we're going to start on round 10. Round 10, we are going to do single crochet in the next 8 stitches, and then we are doing a single crochet increase into the 9th stitch. So let's get going. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and then an increase into the next one. I'm going to continue that all the way around, and I will see you at the stitch marker. And that is row 10 done. So we're moving on to row 11, which is a single crochet into the next 9 stitches, and then a single crochet increase into the 10th stitch. That pattern all the way around, and I'll see you at the stitch marker. Alright, now that row 11 is done, we are going to move on to row 12, which is going to be our final one of these increases. Following the same pattern still, we're going to do a single crochet into the next 10 stitches, and then a single crochet increase into the 11th stitch. We're going to follow that pattern all the way around, and then we'll be able to move on to something else. 10 single crochets, and now we're working the increase into the next. And then we're following that pattern all the way around. I'll see you at the stitch marker. Now that we've finished round 12, what you want to do is just measure the base of this to see it should be around 24 centimeters, which is where this little thing comes in. So we're pretty much right at 24 centimeters here. If you're not at 24 centimeters, you can continue following that same pattern for another round or two until you get to 24 centimeters. So I'll put that up here. You can pause and follow the instructions for another couple of rounds if you're not quite there yet, but otherwise we will move on to the next step. What we're going to do is work around these stitches into the back loop only. So we're going to do a single crochet into the back loop of each stitch. So normally when we're working into our stitches, we're working under both of the lines in this little V of each stitch. And what we're going to do for a back loop only is just go into the back loop of those. Remembering that we're working triple stranded, so we're still going under 3 strands of yarn, but only in that back loop. And if you're not sure which way to hold your base, the end of your magic ring should be on the inside. So when you're working your back loop, the back loop should be the loop closest to where those strands are coming out. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I'll do it for a few and then we'll speed up. So that's my first back loop only. Because you're working in like a relatively tight tension to make the gap smaller and working with 3 strands of yarn, it is a little harder going, and I find that it's a little slower going as well than my usual crochet, but that's okay. Just think of the cute possums and take a break when your hands need a break. So we're going to continue working. You'll see as you work that you'll see the front loop still here. So we're going to continue that all the way around, just a single crochet into each of the back loops until you're back at the start of your round, back at your stitch marker. And I'll see you there. Alright, so I've done my row of back loop only. You can see the little line of front rows around my base now. And the next section of this is quite easy. We're just going to work up the sides until we hit where the little possum doorway needs to start. So we are simply going to do 7 rounds of single crochet all the way around. So the part we're working on now is this from the base up to the doorway. So 7 rounds of single crochet all the way around, 1 in every stitch, and I'll get us started and then I'll just see you back at the end of the 7 rounds. I won't make you watch the whole thing. Nice and easy, working a single crochet into every stitch, and you'll start to see the sides of the Possum Palace forming. Continue that all the way around, and I will see you after 7 more rounds. Okay, so now we've made our 7 rounds of single crochet to make the start of the side of the Possum Palace. The next step is to leave a gap for the doorway so that the rescue volunteers can get possums in and out of this beautiful Possum Palace that you're creating. So the way we're going to do that is we're actually going to chain 1 and start working back around, and we're going to leave a gap. So the gap we're leaving is going to be 10 stitches. So the easiest way I find to do this is you have your stitch marker in your first stitch, and then you're going to count 10 back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's the gap that we're leaving, and we're just going to put another stitch marker in there. And so that, instead of having to count 62 stitches all the way around and stop, we're counting 10 back and putting another stitch marker in. So that is the inside stitch of our doorway. So now Now what we're going to do is make 62 single crochets around, which should get you to that last open stitch before your stitch marker here. So let's get started. What we're going to do first is chain 1, and then we're going to turn our work. Skip that chain that you've just made here and work into the single crochet underneath it, and we're going to work a single crochet. And then we're going to continue working single crochets all the way around until we hit that other stitch marker that we've put in. So I'll see you back towards the end so I can show you where to stop near that stitch marker. It will be 62 single crochets around. However, if you needed to add some more rows to your base to make it wide enough, that number will change. So just remember to be aware of that and leave more of a gap if needed. Okay, so I'm here now up to my final single crochet before I hit my stitch marker. So I'm going to work one more single crochet in there, and then that should be the end of this round. So you should have 62 new single crochets you've just made in this round, and then 10 unworked stitches in between them. Again, if you have expanded the base, you'll need to leave probably a bit more of a gap because it probably means your tension is tight or your yarn is a bit thinner, and you'll need to make sure this gap will be able to reach a volunteer's hand holding a little possum to put them in and out of the Possum Palace. So mine is about 10 centimeters, 10 to 11 centimeters. So if you've had to expand your base, work off that to know how many to leave. And then we can move on to our next row. So then the next few rows are all going to follow the same pattern. What we're going to do is we're going to chain 1 and then turn our work and work back into that first single crochet. So skip the chain you've made, which is here, and work into this single crochet below it. And now you're going to make your way back around, finishing in that first single crochet from this previous row that we've just finished. And I will see you back there. I'll show you this turn one more time, and then we're going to work a few rows of that to make a doorway. Okay, I'm getting close to the end of this row, and I am rapidly losing light, as you may be able to tell. So I'll finish this one off, and then for you I'll be back in a couple of seconds, but for me I will come back tomorrow with better lighting for you all. So I've got 2 more stitches in this row, 1, and then this is the final one. So that's the second of these rows we've done together. You can see this doorway is starting to build up a little bit here. And I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to chain 1, turn my work, and work back into the single crochet underneath. So I'm skipping that chain. Let's see if I can do it better. Skipping this chain. Here's the one on my hook, here's a chain, and then here is the single crochet, and that's the one I'm working into. And then I'm going to do that all the way back around. So we're going to continue this. We're going to go chain 1, single crochet 62, whatever number it is, until you're back at the other end of your doorway, and then repeat that. We're going to do that for 8 rows in total. So we've already done 2 of them, and I'll meet you back at the end to show you how we close the doorway up, which will happen at the end of row 28 for anyone who is keeping track. Okay. So at the end of round 28, you should be back at your doorway, and what we're going to do to finish round 28 is to make 10 chain stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then we're going to single crochet into the first stitch on the other side of the doorway, and that is going to close it up nicely. And then this stitch here is the first stitch of your new round 29. So round 28 ends with your chain 10 and row 29 starts with the single crochet that connects it to the other side. So I'm going to grab one of these 2 stitch markers, pop it in here so I know where the start of my round is. And then this 29th round is going to be, we're going to single crochet all the way around again until we get to the end, and then into this chain 10 space we're going to make 10 single crochets. So single crochet all the way around, and I will meet you back before this chain and I will show you what to do into that chain space. So here I am making the last single crochet before we hit the chain, and then what we're going to do around this chain space, we're going to make 10 single crochets, but we're not working into the chain, we're working completely around it. So I'm going to put my hook around, so under the chain, pick up my yarn and make a single crochet like that. So under the full chain, pick up my yarn and make a single crochet. And we're going to do 10 of them in there, which should carry us across to the start of our round. So I've done 2, just push this down. 5, if you need to, you can kind of shuffle them along, push them along so that you can have space for all 10. And 10. So that's 10 single crochets that have gone. You can see that you can't see that chain anymore, you can just see the bottom of all of those single crochets that we've made. So pull them along if you need to even them out along the chain. Our next stitch is just a single crochet into the start of our round. So now we're working back in full rounds of single crochet in one all the way around. So these now just act as regular stitches in your round. So we're going to do 5 rounds now. So from row 30 to row 34 of single crochets all the way around. So we'll start that together as usual. One into our first, pop our stitch marker back in. And away we go. Alright, so 5 rows of single crochet all the way around. So we're building up a bit of space above the doorway now, and then I will meet you back after round 34. Okay, I have just finished row 34. Now it's getting a little bit harder to film because this is so tall. At this point, what I would do before we move on to round 35 is to weave in the ends that you have inside here from your magic ring. So I'm gonna flip this inside out and weave those in. And the reason we want to weave these in now is because we're about to close up the top of the Possum Palace, so it's going to be harder to get in here, and they do need to get woven in so that the volunteers can clean these, but also so that the possums don't catch themselves. So I do find this a little bit more difficult than usual, just because of how tight the stitches are, and to be honest, it's probably even easier to weave them in before you start working the sides, but here we are. So I'm just going to pull these through and try and secure them quite well. You can do this however suits you, you just need to make sure that they are really, really secure. So go back and forth a few different directions and then snip them off very, very close to the end. So go ahead and do that, and I'll speed this up and see you when we're all done. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start closing the top of this. So the first thing we're going to do, the next round is all worked in the back loop only. So again, normally we're working through both stitches on these V's, but for this round we're going to work just in the back loop. And we're going to work 10 single crochets in the back loop only, and then we're going to do an invisible decrease on the following 2. So we'll work that together. So back loop only, 1. Super important to use the back loop only because we come back and we use the front loops in the future on this pattern. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then we're going to do an invisible decrease with the next 2. So I'm going to catch the back loop of the next stitch and then the back loop of the stitch after, yarn over, pull through both of those back loops that I've got on, and then complete my single crochet. So that's an invisible decrease, pulling those 2 together. We're going to follow that pattern all the way around, 10 single crochets in the back loop only, and then an invisible decrease using the back loop only. Okay, so now we're back at our stitch marker. We finished that round, and you'll see there's a super clear line here of your front loops that you haven't worked yet, and we'll come back to those after we finish closing the top up here. So the next round is going to be a single crochet into the next 9 stitches and then an invisible decrease of the 10th and 11th stitch, and we'll follow that pattern all the way around. So we're working back into both loops now, not just the back loop, and the rest of the rounds now we'll be working into the full stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And now with a regular invisible decrease, instead of using the back loops, I use the front loops of them. So you go into the front loop only of the next stitch, making sure to catch all 3 of your strands, front loop only of your next stitch, front loop only of the one after, yarn over and pull through both of those, and then yarn over and finish your single crochet. Follow that pattern all the way around until you reach your stitch marker again, and I'll see you there for the next round. We've finished that round now, so once again we are moving into a similar pattern, except this time we are doing 8 single crochets and then the invisible decrease. And we're following that pattern all the way around. So start with our first single crochet, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then once again an invisible decrease into the front loops of the following 2 stitches. Follow that pattern all the way around of 8 single crochets and an invisible decrease, and I will meet you back at the stitch marker. That's that round done. You might start to see now it's closing in on itself a little bit. So the next round that we're working on is we're going to be doing 7 single crochets and then a decrease. So still working in that same pattern. Loop only of the next 2 for your invisible decrease. There you go. So continue that pattern of 7 single crochets and an invisible decrease all the way around, and I'll see you back at the stitch marker. Alright, that row is done. Now we're on to our next round, which is 6 single crochets and then the invisible decrease. So we're following that same pattern where the single crochets in between the decrease drops by 1 every round. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and our invisible decrease using the front loops only. Follow that pattern all the way around and I'll see you back at the stitch marker. Round is done. The rounds should be getting quicker and quicker for you now as there's fewer and fewer stitches to do in them. Next round, no prizes for guessing. We are doing 5 single crochets followed by the invisible decrease. So once again we'll start it together. 1, pop that back in, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and then our invisible decrease. There you go. Keep following that around, doing 5 stitches followed by an invisible decrease, and I'll see you back at the stitch marker. Alright, we are inching ever closer. The next round, 4 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease. So we've got 1, stitch marker back in, 2, 3, 4, and our invisible decrease here. Once again, we are going to do that all the way around, following that pattern of 4 single crochets and an invisible decrease, and then we will meet back up at the stitch marker. Next go around is 3 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease. So let's go 1, 2, 3, decrease. And we're gonna once again follow that pattern all the way around until you reach your stitch marker, and we'll meet back there. Another round done. We're nearly at the finish of this decrease pattern. The next round we're going to be doing 2 single crochets followed by your decrease. So 1, 2, decrease, and repeating that all the way around until you reach your stitch marker again. We are getting so close. Next round, super simple, 1 single crochet followed by your invisible decrease, and we are doing that all the way around. Back at our stitch marker, And the last thing to do is just 6 decreases all the way around. So you should have 12 stitches at this point in your round, and we're just going to decrease all the way around, which will make it 6 stitches, and then we're sewing it up. And once you finish those 6, I just pull it through so you've got a bit to work with, sewing it in, and snip them off. All 3 of them all the way through. You can take your stitch marker out now, and now to close it up nice and tight, what I'm going to do is go from, in the front loops only of these, I'm going to go from the inside to the outside through all 6 of them. So that's pulled through the first one, and I'm going to go into the second one, front loop only, from the inside to the outside. 2, and just keep sort of pulling it tight as I go. So third one the same, inside to outside, pull it nice and tight. Fourth one. Fifth one. And the 6th one. Pull it very, very tight, and you've closed up your hole. And now that you've closed up the hole, just you want to weave in a bit more of this. It doesn't need to be as perfect as the last one because it's not on the inside of the Possum Palace where their claws can get into it. So just weave it through a few more stitches, and then you can cut off the end. Now we just need to add something at the top here so that it can hang up onto trees or branches or inside wherever the rescuers are working. So to do that, we're going to grab our hook again, we're going to grab our yarn again, and we're going to keep going. So this is where we're going to use the front loops that we had up the top here. So this nice line, and it should be roughly where your Possum Palace lid starts sort of folding in, should be here. So the first thing we're going to do, we're just going to pop, you can attach your yarn back really on any of these stitches, so I'm just going to pop it through one of these, my hook is through one of these, I'm going to pull through, and I'm just going to slip stitch it onto there, and then I'm going to, in that same space where I've just attached the yarn, I'm going to make a single crochet. So we've attached our yarn back and we have a single crochet here to work into. And now what we're going to do is simply single crochet into all of these front loops all the way around. So we're sort of starting again here. And I'm just going to, as I do it, crochet over these ends. So into the next front loop. If you want to add a stitch marker here, you can, because we will be working back in rounds after this. So into the front loop and making a single crochet. Just going over these ends means I'm not going to have to weave them in later. So I'm going to do that. Alright, keep working around until you're back at your first stitch, or back at the stitch marker if you put one in, and I'll see you back there. Alright, so I've just finished that round, and you'll see there's a very tiny lip now on your Possum Palace, and the next 2 rounds all we're going to do is continue working around with a single crochet into each stitch. So if you followed the same base pattern, if you didn't have to add any extra rounds at the base, you should have 72 stitches in this top row. So we're going to work 72 stitches around for 2 more rows. So we'll do that, and then we can meet back at the stitch marker. We'll do the start together. So if you started at the first stitch, you might find there's a bit of a gap in between your last stitch and your first stitch, but that's okay. Just pull it over and it'll sort of close itself up, line itself back up. So there's our first stitch, and we're going to go 1 single crochet in every stitch all the way around, so that'll be 72 stitches or thereabouts, and we'll meet back at the stitch marker after you've done 2 rounds of that. Okay, so we've now finished those 2 rounds of single crochets all the way around, and you can see this little lip here is growing. So we've only got, the good news is we've only got 2 rows to go, and then we will be done. This round you're going to do a single crochet into the next 11 stitches. So that's 1. And after your 11th stitch, we're going to make the first little handle. So we're just going to make 12 chain stitches. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So you got 12 chain stitches there, and then we're going to continue single crocheting around. So into the next stitch we're going to do a single crochet, and that connects the chain back. So you can see now we've got a little handle, and then we're going to do 20 single crochets until we make our next chain. So we've just done the first one of those here, so we're going to do another 19. So that's our 20th stitch done just there, and so we're going to do another chain of 12 and then continue single crocheting around. So there's our chain of 12, and now starting from the next stitch we're going to do another 20 single crochets and then make another chain. That's our 20th single crochet there, and now we're going to make another chain of 12. And now, ever so slightly differently, the next lot of single crochets is going to be 21 stitches. So we're going to make 21 single crochets and then a chain of 12. There's our 21st stitch. We're back at our stitch marker, and we're just going to make 12 chains. And now start our final round. So the final round, very simple, is we're going to single crochet all the way around, but into each of these chain 12 spaces we're going to place 12 single crochets. So starting with connecting this first chain of 12 into the next stitch, and crochet over to the next chain space. We're going to make our final single crochet here. And then the same way we did with this door opening, we're going to make 12 single crochets into this chain, but we're going to go all the way around the chain, so we're not going to actually work into the chain stitches, but rather around the chain. I'm going to put my hook around the chain and pick up my yarn and make a stitch. So 12 single crochets into that. So that's 8. As with the doorway, if you need to shuffle them along, you can push them along. My 12th single crochet. And you see that just makes the chain nice and sturdy, so it's not going to break when it's hanging with a bit of weight in it with the possums. So we're just going to continue repeating that pattern, putting a single crochet into every single crochet along, and then into these chains we're going to work 12 single crochets around the chain to make them nice and strong. Do that all the way around until we reach this stitch marker again, and I'll see you there. Alright, so I've just finished putting the final 12 single crochets in my last handle, and what I like to do to finish it off is just make one more single crochet at the base of that handle, so in the first stitch of your next round, and then just a couple of slip stitches to help with some extra security. And then that's it. You are done. Pull your yarn through, cut it off, and all that's left to do is weave in these ends nice and tightly and securely, and then you will have your little Possum Palace. So there's 2 handles that are a little bit closer together and 2 that are a little bit further apart. So you can see they're not exactly evenly spaced around, and that is a-okay. So weave it in, and congratulations, you are finished. Congratulations, you have finished your Possum Palace. It looks a bit sad with nothing in it, doesn't it? But it is a huge help to all our animal rescuers of our native wildlife here in Australia. So if you have made it to the end and you have made your own Possum Palace, thank you very, very much. I will have all of the details in the description of where you can send them. I will also have a few links to where you can check what is in high need by the rescue at the moment. I will have links to a page on what type of yarn that is preferred for these, as well as a donation link for the animal rescue, and also of course a link to the PDF. Once again, a huge thank you to Maria, who is at Surely Not Co, for being so supportive of me making this YouTube video tutorial. I really hope that it helps a lot more people be able to make them and donate them to the rescue. So if you've watched, if you've made one, thank you so much, and send them off. Send me your photos if you've made them. I would love to see them. You can tag me on Instagram or just DM them to me. And yeah, happy crafting. And until next time, thank you, and see you again soon. Bye.